I'm Krista Hill.
And I'm Renee Matsella.
And we are the founders of Tacit Edge, a tech education company dedicated to shifting the demographics of women and visible minorities graduating into product management at top companies around the world.
And this is our podcast, Product for Humans, where we explore the human side of product management. We'll answer all your burning questions like, what is product management? What is a product? How do you get started? And why do you belong in product management? That's right, because you belong. We hope you enjoy the show. All right, welcome everybody to Product for Humans. It's Renee and Krista here. Krista, how are you doing?
Amazing. It's Thursday afternoon. Another huge week in the world of entrepreneurship and product. So many exciting things.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that?
I'm just going to make sure I'm muted on the live version because it looks like it's actually streaming very close to our timing here, which is awesome.
Whoa,
Progress.
Product improvements with StreamYard and LinkedIn Live. I thought we'd never see that. That's live is close in time to the recording.
Yeah. So yeah, we did very fast and cheap testing with a client for the first time. They'd never done anything like that before. They'd never experienced product. You know how we talk about how you can talk to people about what it can look like, and then they want to fall back to the things that they know to feel really safe and secure until they experience it. And it's like seeing fire for the first time. And I want to give a huge shout out to our Slack community at Tacit Edge because I put in an ask on a scenario, if anybody fit that scenario, to DM me. And of course, instantly I got about 7 to 10 people just chimed right in saying, yeah, I opened up a Zoom and away we went with the testing, and I was able to record all of that, send it to the entrepreneur. And again, just reinforcing everything that we're going to talk about today, which is just talking to real customers. And the power of that is just, it's undeniable. So that was the huge win for the week. So thanks for asking, because I was so jazzed after that. I was like, I just love what I do and that we can do it like that. And the topic we're going to cover today just really speaks to the value and the magic of what it's like to live that life. And we're so lucky. So yeah. How about you? How was your week like though?
Oh my gosh. Product wise, I think, I don't know. We're doing like a mastermind thing on Friday where we're getting together with other entrepreneurs and talking about problems and how we might be able to help each other to solve them. So once again, like getting out and talking to real people, being vulnerable, asking, hey, what can I do better? What do you think? I think two big themes on product. And yeah, I feel so fortunate that we have a community and like our community and the entrepreneur community that's so open and willing to talk and help each other out.
Yeah. And especially people further along in their business journey than you are. We've come quite a distance with our company. And so to meet now a cohort of folks that are really even in a much different place is amazing, because entrepreneurship, and we talk about this all the time, it is a bit of a lonely endeavor because you're in the space that you're in. And sometimes you don't feel comfortable talking about what's really happening because you don't want it to look like you haven't got it all together. But part of moving to that next place is acknowledging what you don't know and what is the new future that you want to visualize once you've reached certain goals. What are the next set? And it is about moving that goalpost just continually downfield. And it's going to be, I'm with you. I've been so excited about that all week, to just get in a room with people that have the goalpost at a different place than where we are and what we might learn from them.
Yes. And embracing the failure. You're right. Like learning from people who are further along than you and have done all of the mistakes that might be avoidable, might not be avoidable. I just love that with talking to entrepreneurs. I find entrepreneurs are just failure is the name of the game.
So generous with the learning, especially one-on-one.
Yeah. Yeah. And they know that you can't succeed without failure. And that's literally the job of entrepreneurship, is failing and learning and failing and learning. So hopefully that actually relates to our topic today of Transformed by Marty Cagan, because Transformed is all about bringing this product mindset and learning from failure into an organization and Oh my gosh, this new book. Just first off, Krista, what are your thoughts?
Loved it. And when we're working in organizations that are experimenting with transformation or trying to pick up just some basic habits on their way to the big move, usually the playbook is, okay, let's call a consultant that does digital transformation and we'll bring them in and we'll get the playbook and we'll just use that playbook. And I think what I love about what Marty has done here for us is he's shown us that the playbook is evolving, is changing, because the concepts of project to product are moving to the forefront as the vision for the future that we are trying to create is also changing because of technology that is just now possible. So what I strongly encourage people to do, and I know in our very project driven context that we work here in Alberta, we have a strong history of great project management, great fundamentals, principles, execution, all of it. And what he can be polarizing in our community, because love him or hate him. In a room, when you start quoting something from one of Marty's books, instantly some people in the room are just like, oh, that'll never work because Marty doesn't consider XYZ. And I think what this book did a really great job of is highlighting why somebody might say something like that and how to overcome that in the room. When everyone comes to me and they're like, oh, I don't like the book because XYZ, it actually tells me more about where you are in your career than it does about Marty and what he's trying to do. So just a fair warning out there. I would never judge anybody for their opinion on what they think the book is about. But I think in the mission of trying to shine a light on things that are plain language, that are not overly complicated, that are just telltale signs of things that you need to do, it was an incredible read of just the A to Z of what shows up and then how to manage objections. That we'll go into more detail with that through the discussion, but hats off to Marty for putting a whole section of by modality, the templated objections that we have seen in our practice almost verbatim in there. And that is part of prep, is knowing how and what might show up in the room that people might object to around change, which is hard. And it's not change management, it's people and feeling management. And I love how that was highlighted in this book.
I so agree. I think, yeah, I'm glad you brought up, like, a lot of people are like, oh, Marie, that's all it, if it works in a perfect world, this is what it is. And I think that can get people down when we're not in this perfect world, but we can still learn so much because these learnings are from companies that have successfully transformed, successfully launched amazing products. And maybe what I'll do, just start off for folks that haven't read the book, no worries. We're going to be talking about our highlights. We highly recommend you do read the book, though. And I'll also just give a quick overview of who Marty Cagan is, Silicon Valley Product Group, previous books he's done. I think Krista gave a really great intro as to why we're so excited about this book, and also some background on the book. So Marty Cagan and the Silicon Valley Product Group, they've been doing thought leadership around product management for years. And it's not just Marty's got a team of people who are working with product organizations to help them transform and become more technology focused and technology driven, seeing technology as a driver of your business and revenue instead of a cost. So he started with Inspired, where they just lay out all the best practices of amazing product people. And then they do Empowered, which is best practice and techniques used by top product leaders to provide teams with the kind of environment that they need to thrive within a product operating model. And then Transformed, as Krista amazingly put, it is basically a guide to bringing this type of thinking to your entire organization. And I think this is maybe an answer to the folks who are like, this doesn't work in my org. Like, I don't have this perfect environment. No environment is perfect, but here in this book, we get to see examples and principles of organizations that have done this successfully. So very cool. Very cool. So Krista, let's take it back though, because like our first introduction to SVPG and Marty Cagan was inspired. So that
Mhm.
first book that talked about what makes product managers successful, what was it like when you first read that book?
I I'm going to be honest with you. I was in a real low point in my career. I was really struggling with my practice in what felt good to me and what I wanted to be doing versus what was expected to me. So in every room that I walked into, there was always a new person that was Googling my job description for me and informing me of the tasks and duties that I was doing. And the ones I wanted to do were, interestingly enough, never on that list. So when I came across this book and read it for the first time, it gave me a beacon of hope that I belonged in this job and I shouldn't quit and I shouldn't give up, because the things that were my natural inclination to do, which was talk to customers, was to like see my value not in what I delivered, but what happened because we did this work. And I didn't have the language around that to defend that in a performance review. So really what happened to me is I came out of a performance review where they were like, you're crushing it. You're doing great work. We're going to reward you now with more work. Oh, by the way, we're going to score you super low on this performance review for leadership because you're not strategic enough. So you see that hamster wheel that I was on. And at some point you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And so, yeah, when I discovered the book, I was on that hamster wheel, trying to figure out what I was really being valued for. And if I'm being valued based on my output, not my outcomes, but I'm not strategic enough, and it's a popularity contest between me and the other product people with our stakeholders as to whether or not they will give me a good review. How am I ever going to get promoted to the next place in my career where I have to make stakeholders happy in a delivery model, but I have to be strategic enough that I can challenge the direction of my teams? It seemed impossible. And to me, a game that was not possible to win. And then when I read the book, I realized what my job was really. And so I sat down with my team. And thankfully, I worked with an incredible group of developers that had very open minds. And I was like, this is how I want to practice. It's going to be hard, but if we do this, we will do some of the best work in our lives. And if you were working with me in that time, thank you for saying yes and placing that bet on me and that thinking. And it wasn't easy. And again, it wasn't the perfect environment. So I'm not saying that I read the book, I showed it to my team and off to the races. It was amazing. Nothing ever went wrong. Of course, stuff went wrong. But when we talk about the objections in the back of Transformed, it really tries to prepare you for some of the human feelings that show up around losing control of the team. What happens when stakeholders in a very sales-driven organization don't get what they want? How does that play in the power dynamic with you and your boss and the leadership team and you getting a promotion? When we think about what's on the line for us in our careers and what's possible, I think I got the best gift, which was a team that believed in me, and we didn't win every battle, but we went in with the best of intentions and really great practices, and we experimented. And within our little cocoon, we were our own little pilot of what it was like to practice the beginnings of a product model. And for that, I'll forever be grateful. So that was the impact of Inspired on me. And then that led me to talking to you about it. And then we were volunteering for Product YYC on the board. And we were able to write a grant to bring the attention of this thinking to Alberta Innovates. And in one of the very first grants that you and I wrote was budget to bring a bunch of folks within Calgary that were practicing product people to free education from SVPG so that we didn't feel alone. We just really wanted this to be contagious, but we knew in our day jobs that was going to be very difficult for us to do onesie, twosie. So yeah, I'll never forget that, Renee, when we wrote that first grant for that. Like, how might we try to introduce this thinking to more people so it could just catch fire? And that was how Inspired changed, I think, our careers and our trajectory ever since.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so many people's careers in short. I think the product operating model, we go from, okay, we have a plan and we have to meet all the requirements and then we launch and then hopefully things work, to this idea of, we don't know if this is going to work, if this is going to work. We don't know the right answer. we know what we want to achieve. So trying and failing on the way there, once you realize that you can fail your way to success, it's, we see it in our students. It's just like, wait, I don't have to be perfect. I can just try things and I'll learn more and do better by failing. But yes, it becomes so empowering. And so with that, like you said, working within this model, it's hard to describe. It's something you almost need to, we say this all the time. It's like fire. Okay. We can describe fire, but you're not really going to understand it until you see it and you feel it. What does it feel like and what does it look like? To the best of your ability, how can you describe the product operating model and this product mindset that we can shift to?
In my mind, 2 words: satisfying work. It really is. I'll never forget the time that I brought a customer on live to test a prototype that the team had never done that before. We did the first of its kind design sprint. None of them had ever done that before. To get folks to agree to let the development team take a week, and we agreed as a group that shipping code wasn't going to be the thing that we shipped. It was going to be learnings, and that was okay. There were so many things that led up to that. But then when you see the results of them, seeing their work used by real people, as I was walking around the room, watching it all happen, I thought to myself, this is it. Like, humans want to know how their work impacted the lives of someone else. And I think when we work in a pure delivery model, that's what we're robbing people of, is that interaction and that connection with how their work that they sweat over, tested, iterated on, how it changed the experience for someone. I think just seeing that was the inspiration to keep going. And from that point, the developers, they got it. They didn't want to work any other way anymore, but that having to help them unlearn that their value was tied to just shipping code, but actually us learning together and participating in discovery was also a shift. And one thing I really love that Marty highlights in this book is that it's a very fragile thing. Once you create it, it can be easily taken away. And so we're going to talk about like that concept. And I would explain this to the dev team that we're going to push this boulder uphill together. That's a very difficult one to push. But then we also need to take into account what the wedge is behind that boulder that's going to keep it there so that it doesn't just roll back on us and we go back to our old ways, because that is, it's difficult to build and very easy and very fragile. You can lose it so quickly. I've seen that many times in my career. That happens. But also, like I said, how do you keep the fire warm? How do we keep on putting logs on it? And who's going to be there overnight keeping it going? And that it's co-authored, co-owned, and co-managed. And it's got everything to do with everyone's level of participation in wanting to work this way. And then how do we behave and what do we do when we don't show up in the room and we don't want to put in this work? How does that look? And how do we support each other? So that element is not in the book so much, but we have that. We've got that training from other places. We've gone to those efforts to figure that part out. But it is a really great playbook of what you can expect if you don't do that work. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like it is really hard. And I think that's why this book is so important. I think it's estimated that at least 70% of attempted digital transformations within companies fail. I think that's probably a low estimate.
I would agree. Because there's nobody, when you walk into a room and you say the word transformation, everyone has a visceral reaction. And it's not because they're like, oh, we did one and it was awesome. Said no one that I've ever come across.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're missing some very important elements, which is the foundational things that you need to have going for you. And what I really enjoyed about this book was that Marty laid out those first product principles, like what is actually the core foundational elements that you need to be successful, and who do you have working on those elements all the time, not just how do we have them and just think that we always have them, but how do we have them and then maintain them even when things get hard. And I think that's been missing from a lot of transformation playbooks, to be honest, is like, here's the recipe from the consultants, we do XYZ. But when you do this right, what there was a very large acknowledgement is that everyone's job is different. The role that you're playing in the company is different. Your job description is different. And so where I think the number one thing that falls down in every transformation that I've observed is that there isn't that acknowledgement that your job changes. And we didn't ask if that was okay for everybody first. We just did. And for the groups that do suggestions like Marty put in the book that you can have pilot teams where people can volunteer. And it's very reminiscent of some of the early days of our playbook in our practice, where we would have go teams that would be participating in a major change in the operation. We would get folks to volunteer to be a part of it and make it something that was a career development move where you could get coaching and we could learn together. And it was an experiment, but it allowed you to step away from your existing job description and try out another one for this point in time. And I think of all the things, that is probably one of the most impactful, is just that allowing people that place where they can temporarily remove themselves from their existing job function, try on something new, and see and move through the uncertainty of what it would be like to make that transition. So success and transformation is everything has changed, because transformation is not just it's not a facelift. It's like a whole top to bottom shift in your org, and just that acknowledgement of what might that impact be, even from an HR perspective and job description perspective, which is very scary for a lot of organizations for sure.
Oh, it absolutely. It's terrifying. We have to let go of what works to get us to a certain place and then try something brand new. I think the best example of it, so the book has a ton of case studies on companies that did this successfully. And Chris and I both said our favorites were like the train line. So the train line example was a company, basically a railway ticketing system in the UK that was really behind digitally, still had some paper tickets, not optimizing for like how people get on and off of the trains, overcrowding, these types of things. And they said, we need to improve this. We know we need to change to stay relevant when airlines and other travel companies are competing and doing these digital transformations. And when you said like a pilot team, that's what worked for them. They had support from the top saying, we need to do this. So the CEO, a CPO, and the technology lead that were on board with this transformation. But they also started small with a pilot team, that they started with the mobile team. How are we going to get our tickets to folks in a mobile format? Then they started seeing success with that. Failures, learnings, they were super public with the learnings, the failures, and the successes. They were able to do prototyping and testing. People got so excited about all the learnings that were being shared. And this is what I think in Krista and my experience, that's when you know it's starting to happen, when people get excited. Like you said, satisfying work, you get excited about what's going on. And like slowly, not so slowly, over 6 months, they had a whole new way of doing business. They had a mobile application. They started investing in data to then inform the mobile application so they could solve more problems for users. One problem was overcrowding in carriages. So now the app can tell them which carriage isn't overcrowded. So people are more likely to want to use trains. And now all of a sudden, trains are a modern mode of transportation again. And it becomes one of the first modes of transportation that people want to consider in the UK. So that story, like, just highlights so much of what you said, Krista, like that leadership buy-in, that then if stakeholders are unhappy, they have the higher up saying, no, we're going to do this. And that pilot team to just try and start sharing those learnings.
Yeah. And the highlighting of my favorite excerpt from that story was their weekly wins meeting. And Friday afternoon was the most favorite meeting of the week for that team, where they just shared their wins and their learnings. And it made me so proud to know that, again, these were things when we were practicing that we were doing, but nobody else really was. And it made us feel like a bit of an other in our careers. And to read like some of the greatest hits albums of some of the most joyous times in my career, see also in these applications were some of the same techniques. I'm just so incredibly grateful for the team that I was doing that with, and that they said yes. And they also loved it too. And I'll never forget it. Like, people would see us in these rooms on a Friday afternoon and really would just do anything to come in and join us because they knew we were having a good time. And it was some of the best years of my product life. So yeah, so many great stories that really took me back to some of those highlight moments in a career. And when you think about when I started this conversation saying I started at a very low point in my career, and thanks to these books, and I know it's not every problem or thing you face in your career can be solved by one individual book, because if that was the case, we wouldn't have this podcast, we wouldn't have our curriculum, none of us would be doing the work that we're doing. It's not just about the book. It's about the sentiment and how when you read something, it inspires you to take an action to try something. And really what I got from this book is that if you try a couple things and it doesn't work, here's some things you might want to consider that are wraparound pieces of information that might help you get up, dust off, try again. And that to me is the spirit of SVPG. Dust off, try it again. Here's what you might not have considered. And I've never seen anyone in the market speak like this. And I have to tell you, I have a lot of appreciation for it, because it is a get up, dust off, and try again. If you're in product and you love it, this is what we're doing every day, all day. Yeah.
Oh, it truly is. And it's when you talk about that golden team that you had, like I had that too. And you like chase that
forever after.
That forever. And like people
Yeah.
have been wondering, what should I be looking for in my team to know that we have that? And like you said, like failure doesn't feel it, like it sucks, but we own it as a team. That's one of the major things I see in teams that really follow the product operating model. We know we're going to fail. We know we're going to disappoint people. We know that, especially if we're operating in a company that isn't transforming, like there's a lot of pockets of this thinking at companies that are more project and delivery focused. You can create pockets of this within those companies. It's harder and you have to have a lot more courage. But what it looks like is we failed and we own it as a team. You can't fire all of us. Right?
I mean, you could, but it's expensive.
You could, but not a great idea. Like, we're sharing learnings. We're reconnected with why we started doing this work in the first place, which is to solve problems for people that we care about with people that we care about. Like, yeah. It's exciting. It's fun. We're learning. We're trying new things, and we're motivated by our passion instead of fear. I think we see that.
Yes.
Passion over fear.
I love that, Renee. Thank you, because that is really it. And if you do your job with that level of enthusiasm and the fear factor goes down around repercussions of what might happen if you don't get it perfect, that's where all the good work lives. And I know that's easy for us to say and talk about how we've had that in our careers and how fortunate we were to have it. We do know it is a lot of work to get it there. And so we're definitely not blind to that. But again, when we go back to the series of books, and Transformed being this latest edition, it is about that path of trying to create that for yourself. And how might you? So again, if you're reading these books and you try something for the first time and it doesn't work, that's not what we're telling people to do and just throw it away, right? If you're really in the mindset where you are project focused, framework focused, one size fits all focused, process focused, none of these books are going to work for you. They're not for you. And that's just it. And so that's why I said, when I talk about Marty and the inspiration that he's given me in my career, and I see people have that kind of reaction, well, he always talks about the perfect environment. And I always just have to say, you're completely missing the point. The point is there are other ways of operating, and you can always write a story where something's going to go wrong. That is known. But you can also write a story where we overcome that and we get a few things right. And that's, again, really why when we look at these books, plus even like Melissa Perry, The Build Trap, all of these great stories of how might you do something different when the playbook of the past just keeps on getting you the same result. What else can you try? What else is possible? We have technology that is just now possible. We have people with EQ in the workplace that are developing more of those skills. The environment to which we're operating in is never standing still. There's always a shift. And with the popularity of the new playbook on management versus leadership and emotional intelligence training and just that self-awareness we're bringing to the workplace, it's an exciting time, I think, to be attempting new versions of transformation where you are. And you may not get a different result if you don't have those core product first principles. And we'll go over those in a second just to highlight what they are. But you have a different group of people in the workplace than you've ever had. You've got younger folks coming in. You've got a lot of folks reflecting on their career. Times are changing. It's not the same. So yeah, I don't know, Renee, if we want to cover what those product first principles are, just for anybody who's listening who hasn't read the book, so we can just unpack those and talk those through a little bit.
Let's do it. So there's several principles in the book, but 10 in particular were hired as being extremely important. So first, the role of the CEO. Then we have the role of technology. We have strong product leaders. We have true product managers. So not project managers, product managers. We have professional product designers, empowered engineers. So not, oh, I'll build this feature. Do you want fries with that type of engineers?
And a Diet Coke, please.
Yeah. We have insights-based product strategy, stakeholder collaboration, continuous evangelization of outcomes, and corporate courage.
I love that phrase. Corporate courage.
Courage. This is a phrase that's newer in the SVPG books, and I think it is incredibly important because when we think about what holds us back from transformation, it's fear.
Yeah.
And so this requires courage. It requires courage to try something new, to ask teams to solve problems instead of deliver outputs, to acknowledge that we don't know the right answer and we're going to experiment and try to find it instead of having a giant document with
requirement docs.
Yeah. The detailed requirements doc that if we just check these boxes, it'll be successful. We have to acknowledge that's not reality, that we don't know. And it's hard. It's scary. So, Krista, based on those 10, what are really standing out to you?
I think if we go back to that earlier conversation where I talked about how we're pushing that boulder up and we need the wedge, I see the CEO as being that wedge, because we've all been in a scenario where we built something and there was something we didn't consider after release. I'm going to give you an example. Hypothetically speaking, someone on client support or relationship management wasn't aware of something, and immediately there is a call to the CEO with a big ol', what's Krista doing? This completely sidetracked our team. It was a disaster. Everyone in product knows this scenario. It happens over and over. And what we need the role of the CEO to say is, I hear you. This is happening. Let's get in a room and talk it through, instead of get Krista up here. Let's figure out a way that we can undo what was just done and go back to the things that we were doing before so that I don't get these calls anymore. And that's the wedge. So if you don't have someone in the higher levels of leadership, all the way up to the CEO, bought in so that when things get hard and something happens that is unexpected, which is guaranteed, that you have a person that will stop that from escalating and instead convene people for the truest form of collaboration, which is sharing ideas, not withholding information, not being manipulative. So this can show up in many different forms in an organization, but I think we all know that if that call comes up and the big I told you so conversation happens, it is a recipe for that wedge to get flicked out of place, and then we're back to square one. So to me, this was a real highlight, I think, of something that we coach to every day, in that usually when we are contacted to go in to train a team, it's because we're not delivering fast enough. That's the thing that we hear. But actually, it's usually a symptom of lack of alignment, further up, lack of focus, no product strategy, all the things that you really need to make transformation work. So we have to go up to the CEO level and then coach back to where we are doing the training. So it is a constant movement from transformation and education happening at the top levels and at the bottom. But it is staggering to me how frequently we always hear that they want us to start from the bottom up because they think it's a this problem, but actually it's up here. So I wanted to highlight that because that really stood out for me here, that this person is the chief evangelist of staying in the game, not bailing and not getting cold feet either. But I understand, though, from a CEO's perspective, how much is on the line, especially with their relationship with the board. Having worked in executive and being one myself, I do know that is a real big tightrope. So it's a big ask. It's not small. So how might we navigate that when it's less than perfect? And I think number two, the role of technology and seeing the shift of tech being a line item like IT, that we've known it for a very long time, but actually it just being the core business enabler and how it's the machine of our future. And we can no longer see it as just like a siloed line item. It's now a strategy. So how might we see our IT teams differently? Stop calling them that. Just let go of that term, knowing that we've evolved way past that. So if you are branding yourself and your teams as IT or the Internet of Things, what can you do within your teams to start driving awareness that the shift in education and learnings and terminology has moved past that? And how can you just do your own little rebrand? Because that is so powerful when you start to educate the business of your value and what they can realize and the things that can happen. We have at least 2 or 3 organizations that we're working with that would really benefit from folks feeling empowered that they could do that, so that they can step away from just that traditional model and those original ideas we had around these concepts that date back to the beginnings of the internet. But guess what? We're way past that. So yeah, I could go on, Renee, but I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts on any of those things before I keep going.
Oh, I completely agree. Like the role of the CEO, you can really understand why this is hard. So we want to try this new thing, and inevitably things are going to go wrong. Inevitably things are going to be painful. Inevitably things are going to get worse before they get better. And they have to say, okay, we're sticking with it. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. We're sticking with it. It's really hard. And it's for all the leadership. And I understand for the stakeholders as well, the stakeholder collaboration. I think when we see where this all falls down, it is that because maybe we have a product team, maybe our IT team is transforming to be more product led. That changes and affects everybody. And in the book, they talk about how stakeholders in this traditional way of working, often they're like, hey, build this. Hey, I want this. Can you build it? And they build it and they just move on. And now instead, it's a shift to, this is the most important problem for our user. We don't know how we're going to solve it. And we need your help to solve it. We're no longer just building stuff for what you ask for as the business. Mm-hmm. So stakeholders shift from being, hey, build me this. Thank you. Bye. And really it's a power imbalance. Yeah. Now we are equals. You're supporting, and we're all working together for our users. Our end users are number one, and we need to be a team. So that is a really tough shift. And what we have seen work for this is, instead of calling your stakeholders, invite them to be a part of the pilot team to start working in this new way. And then they become part of the team and so they share in the glory of the success, and they also share in the rallying when things go wrong. And it's no longer us versus them. We're a team. Mm-hmm. We're working together. So that is the thing. I think that's the only thing that we've seen work in our experience to really bring this along.
To further that, have them educate themselves together. So in that pilot team, if you're going to take a course, if you're going to do anything, bring your stakeholder to that. And again, we don't call them stakeholders in our practice anymore. We've moved away from that language. We only talk in terms of business partners because we believe language matters. And when I call you a certain thing that it may call on certain behavior in you that I'm not looking for. I want you to be my partner in this conversation. I'm not sliding a problem across the table to you and you slide it back to me. We are having an exchange, which is a collaboration. And that doesn't mean that we're just showing up in a meeting and talking at each other. It's very much a two-way exchange. And if you read all the product management forums, and next to how do I prioritize my backlog, I think the next one that really rises to the surface is how do I manage my stakeholders? And I think this is a culture in product that when we talk about strong product leaders, which is the third ingredient, it's really a shift away from how do I manage my stakeholders to how do I educate, inform, and collaborate with them and make them a part of this process. What if you have a sales-led organization where the stakeholder, if they don't get their thing, they don't get their sale? That is a huge thing to lose control over. I think we grossly underestimate what this shift means to a lot of traditional stakeholder groups. So how can strong leaders, and especially on the product side, show up in those conversations and help in that adjustment? And if you don't have strong product leaders who have, again, Marty puts it in the been there, done that category, that they've gone through this transformation before and they know how to show up in these conversations. They know how to train their people to also show up in these conversations, give them really great feedback. And when you have these people, and if you don't, it's going to be very difficult, especially when you hit that messy middle where the proverbial shit hits the fan and those I told you calls start hitting the CEO's desk, because that's when is the beginning of the end for you. So having strong product leaders that have experience in transformation is key. And then Marty highlights another part of it too, that making sure that there's coaches in the mix. And we're not talking about framework coaches. We're talking about coaches that can coach to behaviors and lifting everyone's emotional intelligence. I think was a really great highlight that they talked about the difference between delivery coaches, discovery coaches, product leadership coaches, and transformation coaches and what they specialize in. So leaning on traditional framework coaching models is going to be very difficult. And I have to say to you that, like, when we talk about the concept of product coaching, if you're coming in from the context of, say, where our career started here and where we practiced in Alberta, which is very project led, you're going to have very strong inclinations to being a person who brings solutions to the room. So for us to call ourselves coach means we need to surrender the pathway to the solution, but rather stay with the problem and help the person who has the problem discover the solution for themselves. This is one of the hardest roads you can take in your career, especially if you're very established and you take a lot of pride in the fact that you can bring solutions to teams to help move them forward. And so when we train the competency of product coach, we require that you have a designation of at least an ACC or a PCC from the International Coaching Federation, so that we know that you've done an intensive year of hardcore work in letting go of your solutioning capabilities. So when we talk about the next generation of product coaching, I'm going to draw a line in the sand for us, Renee, that at Tacit, we require that you've done that work because we know how much it's ingrained in our value to be bringing solutions to teams. And we know how hard it is to let that go. But it is transformative for you as a product person to no longer see your value in being that person in the room that's bringing solutions. I'm sure you've got a lot to say on this one, Renee, because it's important to us for that distinction.
Yeah, it is really important. And the book, again, highlights a lot of coaches who look incredible, and they certainly have that been there, done that, and that empowerment mentality that comes from coaching, because coaching is all about empowering. And I think that really relates to the two other of the 10 core principles from the book, the professional product designers and empowered engineers. A lot of product management, a lot of product operating model is empowering designers and engineers to get curious, get excited, understand the user, and then go out and try things and try to solve the problem themselves. So our designers and engineers, they are the ones who are creating innovation. Full stop. We come with the context, the right questions. So I see that coaching training being important at all stages of the product career. Yeah, please. ICF, shout out. ICF.
Huge. And with Canada Coach Academy, and congratulations, Renee, you just got your PCC designation, which is huge. And for us as a team to have walked that path together, I can't say enough as co-founder was what it was like to really unpack, again, that concept of bringing solutions, even with building our own business, how we were able to just show up for each other in a totally different context. It's the biggest gift you can give yourself, really. And if you want to follow the trend towards product coaching and you want to be at the top of your game from the start, it is really bringing your experience in product and then unpacking all the things that you have to unlearn about how you were valued in your career in the past, which is the coaching training, and then relearning what it means to show up differently in the room, plus your experience again, but through a new lens. And it is such a powerful, powerful combination. So we're seeing it sprinkled around, but I will be really public about our stance on that and what it means to be called product coach, because it's deeper and it's a big commitment. And we're excited to see the industry head that direction. And you could see Marty alluding to that concept of product coach. And I would estimate that this will be a subject that we'll be talking about a lot over the next 10 or so years. So we've covered a lot of those 10, but the last ones are very near and dear to our heart, which is that continuous evangelization of the outcomes. And it's funny because whenever I say the word evangel in a corporate context, instantly people's minds go to religious applications and these things. And that's not what we're talking about. It's really about you being your best version of the best PR that you could possibly imagine, shouting from the rooftops at every chance you get publicly within your organization and giving props to your team about the mission that you're on and the things that you're learning. And just when you think it's getting boring because you're tired of talking about the same old thing every time and you try to switch it up, don't. Stay with the stories that you're telling. Stay with that concept and the theories and how you're messaging it, because it's just sinking in to everyone else around you. So stay the course on your very public demos. Try to be seen in the organization to talk about your pilot as much as you can. In an organization Renee and I worked with, we had a weekly all hands where we would ask to talk about it. We didn't wait to be invited. We submitted a subject that we wanted to share to the company. So don't wait to be seen. Step into what you actually can do, which is ask to be seen in your organization. It's incredible. It's a great public speaking experience too as well. And that might freak a lot of people out, but this is one of those things where if you don't talk broadly about the successes you're seeing in your little pilot and in your little group, no one's ever going to adopt it at scale. So it is your biggest, best tool that costs nothing that you have in your control at all times. And then the final one, that corporate courage, number 10, all of these things that we're talking about means stepping out of fitting in to your existing team and your existing structure. You're putting yourself in a place where you're going to be standing out. And this is not easy. So when we talk about the human element of transformation and why it fails, it's because people will dip their toes in, get uncomfortable, and then they'll back away to safety. And it's not to say that's not totally normal. Of course it is. But how do you dip it in and then stay in the game when you get uncomfortable? What is the support system you've got around you to do that? And for me, it was reading Marty's books, talking to Renee, going back to my pod of people that really understood what we were doing. And I didn't hide from the fact that I thought that things were going off the rails. I talked about it because other people had the same feelings. So no, if you're feeling it, they are too. How do we not just pretend that everything's fine when it isn't? These are very challenging things, but so rewarding. These are some of the best conversations and some of the most joyous years of your career if you can find a group of people that you can share this with. So with the amazing amount of work, there's also a lot of joy. But let's just agree that staying with how you're working right now and the organization, how it is also work. And so it's a different type of work that you're signing up for, which is the exciting thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be work either way. So do the better work. And I think it's such a great thing to wrap things up on. And people, share your questions if you have them. But I think our final words and takeaways are similar to from the book. They talk about if you're a product manager and you want to get started working a different way, but your company isn't transforming, what can you do? And I think the recommendations here are exactly the same as we would give. Talk with your team and see if they want to try it. I find it's rare that engineers and designers don't want to try building things that work. That's really it. If you move to, instead of just build this, ship it, to let's try to build things that really work and solve problems for people, your team is likely the first group that will jump on board and be like, heck yeah, let's do this. So they're your early adopters. Talk to them. Try learn the new skills. So there's tons of education out there for engineers. They're going to be learning how to release more often, more frequently. Your UX designers, if you have some, will be learning how to do more prototyping, do better research. We're going to be learning to collaborate more. You can do a book club. You can do education together. This will be the start. And once you have that, talk to your leaders. Say, hey, we're trying to do this. Can you provide some air cover if things go wrong? Like the people we work with, our business partners, things are going to be different. Can you help? And then if this is really working, those leaders might be willing to take that and talk to the CEO and get additional air cover. So that's the 4 steps. And then once you're doing that, like Chris said, those demos, ideation sessions where you're inviting people, sharing the wins that you have, and having everybody own the wins, I think is really important if people see themselves in the win. Because what people are afraid of fundamentally is losing their jobs. It's our basic human needs. That's what makes us afraid of trying new things. But if we can share in the win of this new way of working, those fears go away because we know we're building our careers, we're building our skills. So that's what we would recommend. And Chris, anything to add for?
I think from a key takeaway standpoint, all roads lead to talk to your customers more than you do right now. So that's an actionable thing. Even if you're a practicing product person and you don't have time, you're in that block of back-to-back meetings, try and make it really low stakes and very inexpensive. And think of it in a phrase of, and I say this all the time, what can you do this afternoon for free to get you talking to customers more? If there's a key takeaway from this book, it is really just that. All things start in transformation when we see needs expressed to us firsthand from real people with real problems. And then how might we go about sharing those learnings faster to our teams, which gives us agility. If we have those things, we're covering off a lot of the core principles that we would need if a transformation is coming our way, or if we just want to do it ourselves because it's a great way of working, obviously, and it reduces risk in your product more than you can ever know. So Just those things alone. And if you're a practicing product manager that is facing a transformation, it is going to change the way that you work, and it's going to be quite destabilizing if you're already feeling a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of risk in your job because of delivery focused metrics being what's in your performance review or what drives it. If that's you and you want a safe place to take your product and learn how to do it this way, outside of the confines of where you are right now, Athabasca University has picked up one of our courses that is designed for this purpose, and it's the product management professional. So if you're ready to take this leap so that it's not something you have to do in front of your peers and it's a really scary environment to do that live, there are ways that we can unpack this with you with coaching and mentorship. And just know that the next big leap in your career rarely comes from an internal growth opportunity that is really widely supported. We're all very busy in our careers, and it's great to have external perspectives on what your value is in the job and how might you take your career to the next level. So that's there. And also, sharing this and doing things really grassrootsy, again, like doing a book club with your team. And we did this, Renee and I have experimented with this in many ways, where we, Friday afternoons, again, with the team, we read a chapter, we put it on an audiobook, everybody listened, and then we had a great conversation. Again, that costs nothing. Right? So we don't have to wait for the big machine of transformation to come around to serve this up to you. We want you to know we've achieved this feeling by doing things, again, in an afternoon. What can I do for free? And this is how it always starts. And it starts within you. So if you make it an initiative that's coming from the inside, your chances of success are just so much more amplified. And then come find your community with us. And if you have to have a hard conversation about how this makes you feel, we're here for it. And we have these conversations every day with folks. So read the book, pick it up. If you haven't read Inspired, which describes the role of product manager, gives it clarity. If you are practicing and you just need even more end-to-end exposure to what this job looks like outside of just the lane you might be operating today, Empowered is for you. And then how it fits into the big picture is Transformed. And all of these things together gives you the end-to-end on your career and what you can expect and what you can get excited about this mission that you're on with your career in product. Don't give up in those low moments. Don't think about quitting like I did. Just pick up a book and get inspired to take the next step in your career and bet on yourself that you can do it and that you're surrounded by great people who also want to win too as well. And just rally that internally with your people that you already have today.
Yes. And if you are one of those companies that's looking to transform, plug here, we have a webinar that we're hosting with Technology Alberta. I'll post in the comments here. Come join us. We're talking about what it looks like to take on the product method within your organizations. We'd love to see you there. Thanks, folks.
Well, Renee, another amazing conversation.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. We will see you in the next one.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, rate and review this podcast, and you might find your review in a future episode. Please subscribe to Product for Humans wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. To get more information about Product for Humans and our content, please visit our website at tacit-edge.com, tacit-edge.com. We'll see you next time. Okay? Should we do it one more time?
Sweet. Yeah, let's do it.